Hello, gentlemen. My name is Ngafeeson, son of Dr. Madison and Claudia Ngafeeson. I'm so pleased and proud to present him today. My dad is a father who aspires to build his children to become twice the man that he is, a husband who loves and stands by his wife, a brother who believes in the potential of his family, and a mentor who loves and fulfills his dreams by seeing others fulfill theirs, and a true friend. Please join me in welcoming my father, your friend, brother, and mentor, Dr. Madison Ngafeeson.
So, hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the MenLEAD Conference 2020. We've been planning for this, we've been praying for this, and we are glad that we get an opportunity to share with you in this conference. And I know many of us are joining us from all over the world. Some are joining us from Africa, some from Asia, some from Australia, some from North and South America, and some from Europe. We want to say welcome to our MenLEAD conference. It's our utmost joy to have you in this conference with us. You know, the MenLEAD conference is entering its second year, and we just began just last year in Cameroon. And we are still shaping the conference, and we are changing many things, making and striving to bring value your way. So I am so thankful to the team of speakers that will be speaking at this year's conference. And I am so glad that they are prepared and that they are fired up to make sure that they add value to each one of our lives. But today I want to speak on the subject, relentless pursuit, but I want to be able to share with you my journey. You know, I was raised by women, literally. When I was born, my mother, when I was just very young, handed me over to my grandparents. And when I was living with my grandparents, my grandmother raised me. It was from my grandmother that I learned about unconditional love, because she would literally lay her life down for me and teach me how to be a person that understood the importance of love. I remember when I was 8 years old, I began to live with my auntie and the husband. And then, so I began again to be raised by yet another woman. And I remember when I was about 13, I moved now to stay and live with my biological mother. Again, another woman. And by the way, my mother was a single parent. Now, when I began to grow up, my father was not really present in my life. I remember I met my father for the first time when I was about 5 years old. Second time, maybe when I was about 6. Another time when I was about 13. Actually, when I became an adult, I could literally say that I just stayed under the same roof or spent a night under the same roof with my father probably about 2 times or so. So you see, I was not really, I never really was raised by a man. Now, when I was planning to get married to my dear wife, Claudia, whom some of you already know, she had just lost her father a few years before. And so when I began to court her and to, have this relationship with her, I would later on discover that she was not only looking for someone who will be a husband, but someone who will be to her even like a father. But remember, I never grew up under a father. I never operated under a father. Now, where could I get a crash course to become a father? Where could I learn suddenly to become a real man? So being a man was a challenge for me really growing up. Again, because of the fact that I was literally raised by women. So when I got married, I struggled a lot trying to figure out and trying to create a path for being a man, for being a husband, for being a father, because I never really had great role models that I could relate to really growing up. And so it happened, in our marriage that I struggled through these things, I would be honest with you. But there was a time in my life when I was approaching 40 years of age. And suddenly, I began to really think about what will be the defining factor of my life for the next 40 years. So something happened to me around that time. And about that time, I happened to have been alone. I had just moved cities and I was living in a new city. In fact, my wife and the kids were in another city and they were yet to join me. And at that time, I remember I was also going through even some challenges in my very personal life, challenges in my marriage. But it was at this time that I had a one-on-one with myself, and I began to think about what will define me as a man, what will define me as a human being living with another human being, and who has a dream in their heart to impact the world. I remember this day, I was in the basement, and I decided to take a pen and a paper, and I began to ask, I want to be able to write down something that would define what my life should be like in the next 40 years, if God permits. And so I began to think, it took actually a couple of days. I wanted to come up with something that would define me, what life would be like for me. I call it my legacy statements. So I came out with 5 statements after all of those days about what I believe my life should be about in the next 40 years, if God will allow. So I said to myself, I want to be known as a man who loved his wife as Christ loved the church. You know, I am a person of faith and I am unapologetic about that. So I wanted to be a man who loved his wife like Christ loved the church. Number 2, I wanted to be a father who raised his children in the way they should go. I wanted to be known as a professor because I'm a professor. I wanted to be known as a professor who taught more than information systems, but who taught life to his students. Number 4, I wanted to be known as a citizen, as a countryman who served his native land, Cameroon. So you know now that I come from Cameroon in Central Africa. But I want to be able to serve my nation. And lastly, one of the things that I thought I would do with the rest of my life is to help men and women around the world discover, pursue, and achieve their God-given purpose. When I came to this decision, everything in my life began to change. Everything in my life began to shift. The reason was that I knew that in me, there was not that person that I just described a while ago that was living in me. That person that I just spoke about, that professor, that father, that husband, that friend, that citizen that I just read to you about did not yet exist, at least not in me. And so I began on a journey of growing to becoming the person that I always wanted to be. And this journey led me to begin to bring into my life mentors like Mr. John Maxwell, like Lisa Nichols, and many other people that have spoken into my life. And as I began to do this, and I started up Lead Missions International, and by the way, today marks about 4 years of us reaching out to the nations. So we started Lead Missions International, and we began to teach leadership principles that make our nations prosperous, that make men and women take the lead and become all that they can become in life. But in the space of 4 years, we began reaching prime ministers, presidents, senators, teachers, businessmen. We began to reach people in the orphanages, people that were in the slums of the world. And when these things began to happen, then it dawned on me that it started with a decision. I remember that in the last few years, we have been able to meet the kind of people that to this point or just a few years before I could never imagine. And I have seen people that have walked into my life that have made me a better man, have made me a better husband, has made me a better father, a better brother, just a better citizen, even a better minister. But as I look back to all of the things that have happened in my life in the last few years, it is amazing to me what can happen when we make a decision that we want to become the greatest that we could ever be. You know, the theme of our conference this year is Relentless Pursuit. Are you relentless? Are you desiring in your heart to pursue greatness? To pursue greatness with all of your strength, with all of your might. This is one thing that I know. I have traveled around the world into several countries. I've been in several places. But I know that in the heart of every man, there is a desire to be a great person. I never saw a man who was born desiring to be a poor father. I never saw a man who was born desiring to be a lousy professional. I never saw a man who was desiring to be an absentee father. Every man is born with this desire to be the greatest. Every man is born with the heart of a lion. They want to be a conqueror. They want to be an achiever. Every man on planet Earth is born with this desire. But I have also noticed that not every man gets to become all that they have always wanted to become. So in the last few years, I have been learning how I can strive for the highest ideals and become the man that I should become. And here are 3 things that I have learned in the last few years that I want to share from my own story. You see, my hope is that hopefully as I share my story, it is going to resonate with you. Hopefully it's going to cause you to think about the things that I will share with you today. So, the 3 life lessons that I have learned in my own journey in the pursuit of greatness. Number 1, I discovered that greatness begins with an intention. Like I already said, nobody wants to be a horrible father. Nobody wants to be a terrible professional. Nobody wants to be a bad husband. Nobody begins life wishing to be all of these. But we get ourselves to a place where we are not all of that because of the lack of intention. Do you notice that anytime you do something wrong or you do a mistake or something like that, the excuse you and me always give is, please, I am sorry, I did not intend to hurt you. So I came to notice that when we don't intentionally add value to others, when we don't intentionally pursue certain things, we unintentionally begin to do the wrong things. So it all begins with intentions. A man by the name of Bruce Springsteen once said this. He says, a time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start being the man you want to be. How I pray that we would begin our journey in this MenLEAD conference, that we will start off on our journey of becoming the man we have always wished to become. By the way, do you know something? We are the ones we have been waiting for. Do you remember the gentleman you have always been waiting, the kind of husband you have always been wanting to be, the kind of citizen you have always been wanting to be? Now, you are the one you have been waiting for. But you have to make a decision. You have to come to a place where you make the hard decision of truly who you want to be in this life. Someone said it is either you define yourself or someone else will define you and own you. So William Hazlitt says this. It says, no man is truly great who is great only in his lifetime. The test of greatness is in the page of history. I believe that at this men's conference, we are challenging ourselves as men to be men that stand the test of time, to be men that leave a mark on the sands of time. We want to be men that will go into the history books, like Hazlitt suggested. Friends, it starts with intention. I will be great beginning from this day. That is the decision that we have to make. I will be great. I will start on my journey of greatness beginning today. It will be a relentless pursuit, but it will start with this one thing: my singular intention of wanting to be great. Number 2, I have learned that greatness is achieved through service. Each one of us can attain greatness if we will make the conscious decision of being servants and decide to serve. I'm talking about serving through our individual purposes for our lives. I'm talking about serving our families. I'm talking about serving our professions. I'm talking about serving our communities and serving our nations. You know, I grew up in a religious family. And one of the things that we did in our household is that we went to church every day. One day we read from a verse from the Bible that was strange to me and is only beginning to make sense as I grow older. It was a verse from Matthew 23 and verse 11. It says this, talking about the man Jesus. It says, he said, the greatest among you shall be your servant. What a statement. The greatest is the one who seems to be the smallest. The greatest is the one who is a servant. And I think that this is one of the things that leaders around the world are missing. The pyramid is upside down. You know, the leader is the one who carries the rest. The leader is the one who serves the others. So leadership is about service. So we can begin our greatness journey. So Jesus was saying practically that if you want to be the greatest, you must be willing to be the lowest. So that is where leadership truly starts, at the bottom, where you are serving. By the way, the more people you serve, the greater a leader you become. I remember when I started doing managerial studies, I learned about a scientist by the name of Abraham Maslow. And I know many of you are familiar with Maslow. Now, Maslow wrote a lot from between 1943 to about 1954. And he came out with a certain theory called the theory of self-motivation. Now, in his theory, many of us know that theory to be and know about his work through what he came up with, called the hierarchy of human needs. Well, he says that human beings have a hierarchy of needs. He said that human beings don't desire the same thing at the same time. He said there are some needs that they have to fulfill, and as time goes by, they begin to walk up in a hierarchy, and as they achieve one need, they begin to aspire to another need, and then they aspire to another one. Now let me just kind of just kind of remind us about what he said, which I find to be really intriguing. The first thing he said, that the basic human need was psychological needs. So it talks about the need for food and sleep and clothing and shelter. He said that the second level of needs is safety needs. We want to be secure physically, emotionally. We want to be secure financially. We want to be secure in our well-being and our health. Then he talked about, thirdly, social needs or social belonging. He talked about the need for us to have friends, people that can surround us, to have intimacy, to share intimacy with family and friends and all of that. Then he also talked about the needs of self-esteem, where he was saying, talking about the need for status, the need to achieve our own an ego in society, and importance. So every human being is always wanting to be important, to look important, to sound important, maybe sometimes to even dress like they are important. And as time went on, this self-esteem level used to be the highest in Maslow's hierarchy. But later on, in about 1999, Maslow actually critiqued his own very works and said that there is yet another level that is higher than self-actualization. He said there is another level called transcendency that is higher than self-actualization. He says when we talk about transcendency, we are talking about altruism. We are talking about living beyond just ourselves, just the need to satisfy our physiological needs, more than the need to satisfy our safety, more than the needs of belonging, more than the needs of self-esteem, more than the needs of self-actualization, of becoming all that we can ever become. He said that there is one final need which is at the pinnacle of it all. He said that is the transcendency. He said that it is being able to realize that we can give ourselves to something bigger than us, something greater than us. And he said that is the highest in the hierarchy of human needs. You see, when you and me begin to come to the realization that we need to serve, we need to live our lives in service to others, then we are beginning to start on the journey to transcendency. Because human being and human living is beyond just the triple F. I call something the triple F. Me, myself, and I. Life is more than me, myself, and I. In fact, someone said, in all of God's universe, the world is made up of others with the exception of one person. So the rest of the world is always about others. So we have to live our lives in service for others. The way we become great is to go down to the trenches and begin to serve others. Start by serving your purpose. Then continue to serve your family. Then move on to serve through your profession. Then go on to serve in your community and to serve in your world. The greatest people that you and me respect today in the world have always been people that have served their generation. So here is my question for you. How can a man serve his way to greatness through living out his purpose? I want you to consider, how can a man serve his way to greatness? By serving his family. How can a man serve his way to greatness? By serving through his profession and his calling. How can a man serve his community and his nation? Through becoming the kind of servant that we are talking about here. That is how we walk our way to greatness. Greatness doesn't just come. We serve our way to greatness. When I was coming today, I thought that I would not just only share my own knowledge, but I would also consult with certain wise people. Now, the great Zig Ziglar says this. He says, you were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. Here is my question for you. Begin to sow that seed today. Let the seed of greatness that is in you begin to grow through service. Edmund Hillary says this: people do not decide to become extraordinary. They decide to accomplish extraordinary things. So why not begin today by accomplishing extraordinary things? Things like serving your purpose. Things like serving your family. Things like serving in your profession. Things like serving in your community. Things like serving in your nation. In fact, William Shakespeare says this: be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them. So if you think you were not born with greatness, if you think you cannot achieve greatness, there comes a time that you are even thrust with greatness. If you are a husband, you have been thrust with greatness. Why? Because there is some precious human being called wife that has been given to you. If you are a father, you have been thrust with greatness, because there are some human beings that are looking up to you. They call you father. They are called your children. Greatness has been thrust on you. If you work somewhere and someone has to come to you for a service or for a product, then greatness has been thrust on you. Guess what? Because people are looking up to you to do something. If you serve in any capacity, if you work anywhere, people are looking to you. Family members are looking to you as a brother to be the person that you should be. Greatness has been thrust upon us. If you were never born great, if you thought you were never born great, if you thought that you could never achieve greatness, I want you to know greatness has been thrust on you already. Now, can you live up to becoming the great man that you were born to be? Michael Jordan said this. He says, you must expect great things of yourself before you can do them. Expect great things of yourself before you can do them. But the best place to start is through the instrument of service. So greatness is achieved through service. Number 3, greatness is sustained through a life of discipline. You know, we said that it begins with an intention. We said that it is achieved through service, but it is sustained through discipline. Let me ask you a question. Do you have discipline? Discipline to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. The discipline to be taught, to be trained, to be mentored, to grow. Do you have the discipline to stick to your dreams no matter what? My mentor, Mr. John C. Maxwell, says that success is found in your daily agenda. When you get up every morning, do you put it on your list to discipline yourself so that you do the most important thing that you were called to do? Do you even have a daily agenda? A man by the name of W.K. Hope says this. He says, self-discipline is when your conscience tells you to do something and you don't talk back. So have you stopped talking back to your conscience? Do you put yourself and discipline yourself so that your highest dreams, so that your highest aspirations, so that your hopes and dreams do not go in vain? It will take discipline as men to fulfill the calling that we have been given. Mehmet Ildan says this. He says, men need discipline. He says, countries need discipline. The world needs discipline. He who wants to be successful needs discipline. Be a man of discipline. Wow. What a wonderful advice. I couldn't find any other advice better than this. But discipline is a difficult thing to do. Even the scriptures tell us, Hebrews 12 and 11 says, no discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It is painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of the right living for those who are trained in this way. Discipline is a hard thing to do. It takes you saying no to the other things and keep saying yes to your conscience. You know, Jana Cachola says this about discipline. He says, discipline is not about the rules. It is about the respect. It's respect for those around you, the things you own, and for yourself. Discipline is part of being a steward. Gentlemen, I must submit to you that in our journey towards greatness, this is what it would take. It would take you and me discipline. Discipline is hard work. Discipline is no easy thing. I am grateful that one of the speakers at this conference, Mr. Powell, will be sharing with you the secret of how you can do this hard thing. Because there comes a time in each one of our lives that we tap into something bigger than ourselves, something greater than ourselves. And Mr. Powell will be sharing about that. But I want you to know that if you feel like I don't have what it takes to be disciplined, I don't have what it takes to grow to the level of greatness that we are calling forth in this conference, I want you to know that you can tap into something bigger than you. And that is what this conference is also about. So in my own journey, therefore, I learned that greatness begins with an intention. Have you made a decision that you will be great? Have you made a decision and decided that you will not back down from it, that you will become all that you were born to be? Number 2, we said that greatness is achieved through service, through a life of serving others. But begin by serving your purpose, then serve your family, then serve your profession, then serve your community, and then serve your world. It is achieved through a life of service. And lastly, greatness is sustained through discipline. It is my prayer that all of you men, and that me who is speaking to you, we will be people of discipline. People who put ourselves to the task and hold ourselves accountable till we achieve the fullness of the potential that is in us. Potential is a very powerful word. It speaks about hope. It speaks about possibilities. And that is what we were created for. We were created for possibilities. But unless we challenge ourselves and grow and become the men that the nations are waiting for, that our families are waiting for, that our friends and loved ones are waiting for, we will never achieve that. So let me begin by saying this. Yes, it is possible that we can pursue greatness. And yes, it is possible that we can achieve greatness. I pray that you will begin to think about what it would take to become great. Thank you for listening to me at this moment, and God bless you.